In an echo of the 1930s, the world economic flow of trade and investment is weakening, and political demagoguery is growing. As income inequality divides rich and poor more than ever before, democracies are becoming susceptible to xenophobic and autocratic tendencies by leaders who are tempted to play the nationalist card. The concept for this book grew out of my experiences as a journalist covering the exhilarating days when the forces of freedom had vanquished totalitarianism in what seemed like a climactic battle between good and evil. When thousands of East Germans, among them the future Chancellor, Angela Merkel, streamed across the crumbling Berlin Wall a generation ago to breathe the fresh air of freedom in the West for the first time, I was struck by their shell-shocked expressions of wonder as they moved past the glittering consumer showcases on the Kurfürstendamm Promenade. On that fateful day in November 1989, I had just arrived in Berlin after an exhausting flight from Thailand, where I had been touring Asia as the foreign editor of the Washington Post. My boss, the legendary executive editor Ben Bradley, was characteristically blunt when he woke me in my Bangkok hotel room with a phone call at 3 a.m. "They're tearing down the wall," Bradley said in his raspy voice. "Get your ass to Berlin." Once I finally arrived in Germany and saw the hordes of day-trippers walking across the Berlin Divide from the communist East, I knew from past encounters where their materialistic curiosity would lead them: to the KaDeWe, Kaufhaus des Westens, or Store of the West, Shopping Emporium. As I watched them stroll through aisles where gourmet delicacies were stacked as high as the ceiling, their sense of amazement turned to rage and frustration. They railed against their communist leaders as liars who kept them enslaved with a false narrative that Western affluence was a myth. As they trudged back to their drab apartments, past the mine-strewn buffer zone, tank traps, and concrete barriers that divided East and West Berlin, I became convinced it was a day that assured the collapse of Soviet-style communism as well as the victory of free market democracy. Within a month, Chancellor Helmut Kohl laid out a roadmap that would merge the two Germanys. Soon, other communist regimes were toppled as democratic movements from Prague to Moscow swept them from power. Without a shot being fired, the Cold War had ended, and the Western model of democratic elections, free speech, and open markets was extolled as a model for the rest of the world that would usher in a new age of enlightenment. At last, Europe seemed close to achieving its elusive goal of being whole and free. The West's two key institutions, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization and the European Union, embarked on a phase of expansion to embrace the new democracies in Central and Eastern Europe. Besides merging former communist states into Western institutions, Chancellor Kohl and France's President François Mitterrand insisted that the quest to build a United States of Europe would require other measures to deepen integration and bring Europeans closer together. They pushed through the Maastricht Treaty in 1992 that would culminate in the single European currency, the euro, so that people would not have to cash in their liras, francs, and Deutschmarks when traveling to different countries. 3 years later, European leaders agreed to abolish national frontiers by signing the Schengen Agreement, so travelers would be able to move freely in a borderless continent. These three initiatives, the expansion of NATO and the European Union toward Russia, the creation of the euro currency, and passport-free travel within Europe, were supposed to lay the foundations for a great leap forward toward the goal of a united, prosperous, and peaceful Europe that inspired Jean Monnet, Robert Schuman, and other visionaries amid the ruins left by World War II. In the heady days after German reunification and the collapse of communism,